Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Senator Kenya Wicks, District 34. As a retired Army officer with 30 years of service to this nation, and now as a Georgia Senator, I feel deeply responsible to speak on the issues that strikes our core of our democracy and the values we all share. In light of the recent deployment of the Georgia National Guard, let me be clear. Not only is this misguiding, it's unconstitutional, dangerous, and inconsistent with the very oath that every service member has sworn to uphold. It dishonors the service, undermines the Constitution, and erodes the trust that binds our communities together. I have served this country for 3 decades. I wore the uniform because I believed in the promise of liberty, of opportunity for all. I have seen the weight of the sacrifices that has made by the soldiers and the families. The uniform should be never used to intimidate or divide. It should be used to only protect and serve. Let me end with this. The strength of the American has never come from turning the soldiers against our people. It comes from defending the Constitution, protecting freedoms, standing for what's right, even when it's difficult. I will continue to oppose the efforts of misusing the National Guard, and I urge my fellow colleagues, the fellow citizens, to do the same. Our democracy demands it, the value commands it, and our people deserve it. Thank you. I will be followed by Representative Eric Bell.
Thank you, Senator. Today seems surreal. It feels like we're living in a movie, or the 7th season of FX's American Horror Story, The Cult, where the fear and the manipulation tears communities apart, centering around the cult terrorizing residents after Donald Trump wins the 2016 presidential election. But this is not fiction. This is an ironic hour. I'm coming to you not just as a legislator, but as a son of Georgia, as a veteran who has pledged his life to defend this nation, as a believer in the dignity of every human soul. The threat before us is not just on foreign shores, but from within, with the reckless deployment of the National Guard against its fellow American citizens. Make no mistake, this is not about public safety. It is the erosion of American freedom and the sovereignty. It is a betrayal to the very people who stand to foot the bill, you, the taxpayers. Already in California, the courts have ruled against the unlawful deployment. In D.C. awaits a new lawsuit. And now let's just see what happens in New Orleans. The tide of justice is turning, and Georgia must stand on the right side of history. If the National Guard indeed is to be deployed across cities in America, let us dare to dream that perhaps they will come not with rifles, but with rations. Let them come not to enforce loitering, but to feed the thousands of Americans crushed beneath the weight of poverty and denied economic mobility. If the Guard is coming, maybe they can build homes for the thousands who suffer from mental illness and are forced to scavenge our cities and survive under bridges and in encampments on the outskirts. Maybe, just maybe, the Guard will stand at the schools and not intimidate our children, but prevent the senseless massacres that are committed every day by oddly a person connected to conservatism or MAGA. When the soldiers stand against citizens, it's not that one neighborhood suffers, our very democracy is torn apart. Now let the alarm ring. The Garks are coming, the oligarchs are coming, and at this point, they are here. They whisper poison to our communities and actually poison our food, setting black against brown, yellow against white, and the red against the blue, the destitute against the poor against the middle class, and the middle class even against themselves while they laugh to the banks. Let's be clear, members of the armed forces are not only bound by conscience, but by law. Under the Uniform Code 92 of Military Justice, service members are bound to bound to duty to obey lawful orders, but also bound to refuse unlawful ones. The Nuremberg principles affirm that just following orders is no defense against crimes against humanity. The Department of Justice requires the U.S. forces comply to the rules of law and must refuse participation in unlawful acts. To turn American troops against American citizens are a violation against principle and law, and no service member should be compelled to participate in such. Republican leadership, Georgians of every walk of life, faith, veterans, and active duty and law enforcement, remember your oath to the Constitution and to the people, not to capitalism, not to the false promises of an authoritarian regime, but to freedom. Remember, resistance is the American way. The revolution was fought not to exchange one set of masters for another, but to ensure that no king, no tyrant, no dictator can trample on the dignity of free men and women. Governor Kemp, I will work with you. I will work with every Georgia Republican with a conscience to resist this federal overreach. Remember, your back and your knee cannot bend unless you bend it to fascism, racism, authoritarianism, sexism, disguised as patriotism and religion. Stop the deployment. This is not Nazi Germany nor Stalin Russia. This is supposed to be America, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and right now, freedom is looking a little thin. This is Georgia, where we once prided ourselves on fierce independence, states' rights, local control, not federal servitude. If we refuse to bow to tyranny now, then let's stand together and ensure Georgia remains a beacon of democracy in the age of rising darkness. History is watching. Our children, our grandchildren are listening. Let us not falter, nor be hoodwinked, led astray, or bamboozled. D.C. today, Chicago and New Orleans tomorrow, Atlanta next, let us stand together, shoulder to shoulder, and declare one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. God bless the USA. I will now bring you to Representative Derrick Jackson.
I stand before you alongside my colleagues, fellow military veterans, to address a matter of profound constitutional and moral importance. We are witnessing a troubling overreach of federal power, one that threatens the very foundation of the republic, and most importantly, the safety and well-being of our citizens of our state. The federal government potential deployment of National Guard in our streets, with or without the will of our state government, constitutes a direct violation of the principles to have long governed the relationship between the federal government and the states. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 is not a mere suggestion. It is a law that prohibits the use of federal armed forces as a domestic police force. This is not about being anti-military. Once again, I remind you that we are military veterans. This is about respecting the sacred and distinct roles of our soldiers and our law enforcement officers. Our National Guard members are citizens first and soldiers second, trained to defend our nation from foreign threats. Their training is not for crowd control or domestic law enforcement, and placing them in the position will betray their trust and put both them and our communities at risk. The governor of this state, as Commander-in-Chief of the Georgia National Guard, has a solemn duty and an explicit authority under the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution to oppose the federal intrusion. The 10th Amendment states, and let me be absolutely clear, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Public safety and law enforcement are unequivocally reserved to the states. When the federal government attempts to supersede the governor's authority, it is a flagrant violation of this bedrock principle of federalism. The people of Georgia should be outraged and deeply disappointed that our governor, Governor Kemp, is not exercising his commander-in-chief responsibilities according to his oath he took for this office. His primary responsibility is to the citizens of this state, not to the political agenda of a federal government such as Project 2025. Governor Kemp has the constitutional power to refuse this federal request. It started off with 75, now it's 300 brave men and women going to deploy. Because he has failed to do so, he is betraying his oath and the trust placed in him by the people that he was elected to serve. Let's be absolutely clear about the pretext for the use of the National Guard deployments. This justification for such a drastic measure is often an unproven, manufactured crisis, fictional, deceptive, if you will. We are told that our cities are out of control, that crime is rampant. However, let us examine the facts, specifically in our state's capital, as Atlanta shares a similar profile to Los Angeles, Chicago, Baltimore, all are large cities with a black mayor. Let me be clear, Atlanta is not a city on the brink of collapse. In fact, the crime rates are moving in the right direction. According to data from City of Atlanta and other sources, violent crime in Atlanta has significantly gone down in recent years. Point number one, violent crime overall was down for the third straight year in 2024, hitting a new historic low since 2009. Homicides in Atlanta have gone down, substantially declined. One report says 25% decrease in homicide in 2024, with another stating mid-year of this year, 30% drop compared to previous year. Property crime, also a significant reduction. One report states that the property crime down in Atlanta is 13% this year thus far. Another report states the property crime is down prior to pre-pandemic levels. The trending is going in the right direction with right leadership. Again, let me be clear to the folks in the White House. Atlanta is not a city, and Georgia is not a state that requires military occupation. Our local law enforcement is more than capable of providing public safety. They are trained for that. National Guard are not trained for that. The current trends continue to improve year over year. To use the National Guard in this context is to manufacture a problem where one does not exist, and it escalates a situation that already improving. The current misuse of the National Guard across the United States is a dangerous path we are on. It is an attack on our constitutional structure, a disregard for the sacrifices of our brave men and women in uniform, a failure of leadership at the highest level at the federal and state government. As a candidate for governor, the people of Georgia deserves better. We deserve a governor who will stand up and fight for the sovereignty of our state and the safety of our citizens, not one who will apply or simply acquiesce to the federal overreach. We must demand that our elected leaders honor their oaths and protect the constitutional boundaries that have kept our nation free. And with that, we open up to questions.
Representative Bell, do you believe that the orders that have been issued to the National Guard to support ICE in Washington, D.C. are unlawful? And do you believe those troops should refuse them?
Whenever the National Guard or any military force is set on American soil, it's a pseudo act of war. And we are not at war times. So not only do I believe it's unlawful, it's unconstitutional, and it's a slap in the very face of American sovereignty, in which our founding fathers set out to preserve many years ago, both before me and your ancestors probably stepped foot in this very land. And it's our solemn swear as constitutional officer of the state of Georgia to defend that. So before they even leave the grounds of Georgia, bring the troops home, let them stay here with their families where they can stay safe, and let's continue to make Georgia, or once it was the #1 place to do business, but let's continue to make Georgia and the United States the #1 place to live.
And I will add, I mean, right now, they forward deploy these National Guards in Washington, D.C. What are they doing? They're picking up trash. They're mowing lawn. That is not mission critical. That is not part of the mission for National Guard. When we deploy the brave men and women, it is not for beautification of landscaping. So it is an abuse of power. It is unlawful for them to do what they're doing based on the results that we're seeing our National Guard, our brave men and women are actually doing. I can't read Governor Kemp's mind, but what I will say is this. As I stated in my prepared notes, he is in violation of the 10th Amendment. And the only reason why he is currying favor with this current administration is strictly political. He knows that this goes against the mission of the National Guard. He knows this goes against the scope and scale. I mean, it's going to cost an average of $1.1 million a day. And so here we are, where Governor Kemp already said to all the state agencies, we're going to freeze your money, but yet you're going to deploy National Guard. Who's going to pay that bill? Us, taxpayers. And so he is currying favor with this White House, and unfortunately, it is an abandonment to what he should be doing, and that is being a commander-in-chief for Georgia.
In your eyes, what should the Guard be doing? The governor has stated that this will not conflict or compromise any efforts to protect and respond to emergencies.
So the Governor Kemp cannot predict what's going to happen in Georgia. We're in a hurricane season, for example. And so if we have a devastating hurricane to come through and hit the rural parts of Georgia, as it has been the last few years, we need the National Guard to be here already, being ready to be deployed if need be. Those 300 men and women that he already turned over to the federal government, he has no control over their operations. Once he turned it over to President Trump, until President Trump released those 300, he can't get them back. And so again, that's the reason why I'm saying the scope and scale of operation, he's not taking into consideration of the needs of Georgians, especially while we're still, and as an example, we're still in hurricane season.
That's on Ed King.
Yeah. Oh. Any other questions? Thank you very much.